you guys check out this series.
Good morning. Oh, so close. My name is Eli. This is Tyra, and we are in our Unforgettable series. We are walking through testimonies of people where they have experienced a moment that's unforgettable, where God has shown up, removed an obstacle, removed a situation that they thought was impossible to get over, and revealed himself, and so how they're different as a result of that. And so that's our series. Tyra's going to be talking today. But Tyra, can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Yes, I was born in Atlanta, kind of on the outskirts of Atlanta. I moved to Kansas when I was around 8 or 9 years old, and I was raised in a very small town in Kansas. And then I ended up moving to Savannah in 2022 to be closer with my sister. She lives in Atlanta, so this was as close as we can get without being in Atlanta. And then I also didn't grow up in church. I went to a church with my dad when I was a kid. I was probably around 6 years old, and I went a few times, and I had no idea what was going on. So I did not grow up in church. I also worked as a nurse in pediatrics before all of the stuff that we're about to talk about happened. And I now currently work here at LifeBridge, and I'm a kids ministry coordinator with Jamie.
Awesome. And what is one fun fact, something that someone would know about you? What is that one little nugget you have about yourself?
Well, funny fact, actually. I learned how to ride a bike during the pandemic, which means I was 22 years old. So no training wheels, though.
my mind had a trike. You went to tricycle, and then you worked your way up. And
straight to the bike.
That's good. That's good. And you never forget. It's as easy as running a bike, as I've heard. And so, just we did ask your mom, and she said that you didn't clean your room. Was the fun fact that she wanted everyone to know. Probably for her own personal reasons, just to shame you into that. But she said you did not clean your room. So that's also that's my fun fact for you.
Which is very true, actually.
And so you are here because you faced an obstacle and you lived to tell a tale. And so please, tell us, what obstacle were you facing?
So to go to the beginning of the story, when I moved here and before I moved here, I was extremely active. Very, very active. I lifted heavy weights. I had a nutrition coach, and I basically trained like a bodybuilder, ate like a bodybuilder, but I didn't do bodybuilding. So super active. In my head, I was the healthiest that I could have ever been. Looking back, maybe not so much. But I had been in Savannah for about 2 to 3 months at this point, and we had a blast. We really didn't have a lot of time to do a lot of things because I ended up getting sick very soon. But in August of 2022, I got COVID from a patient. I was working in dermatology, and I got COVID, and it was very hard for me. I just didn't recover very well, and COVID lungs are a real thing, and my lungs did not handle it very well at all. So I was out of work for a few weeks, and then I ended up getting better. And then September 2022, I was sitting on the couch. Me and my mom, I think we were watching a movie or something. We're getting ready to go to bed. I was sitting crisscross applesauce, and I flung my right leg out, and I dislocated my right kneecap. Very weird way to dislocate your right kneecap. But I ended up going to PT, and I went one time, and I was like, I'm never going back to that. So I tried to do it all on my own, which I did, and I did very well, and I ended up going back to the gym and everything. Then January 2023 came, and clearly everything wasn't very healed because my mom was looking at my leg while we're working out, and she's like, your leg is very small. And I'm like, oh, that's kind of rude. Basically, I was losing my muscle in my entire right leg. My calf, my hip was losing muscle. I have pictures of my quad, and it just looks really small compared to my other leg. And she was like, that's not right. Something's going on. So we scheduled an appointment with an orthopedic doctor, and she did an exam. And if you've ever been to an orthopedic doctor, they're kind of brutal. And she was really jiggling my leg around. And she basically said, I have no idea what's going on. She said, you could have a pinched nerve in your back. You could have this, you could have that, but I have no idea. And the next morning I woke up and I was in excruciating pain. Like my leg became paralyzed overnight, basically, and it was cramping, it was twitching, it was doing all the things, and it just didn't work the way it was supposed to. So we immediately, of course, I'm still going to the gym at this time and just dragging my leg behind me. But then we were like, okay, we should probably go see another doctor. So we saw an urgent care orthopedic doctor, and he said, well, you might have a quadricep strain. So I'm like, okay, cool. He gives me like a Medrol dose pack, sends me off, and says, however, I think you should see a trauma orthopedic doctor. And I was like, okay, that's great. So exciting. So it just continued to get worse. Like, it went downhill from there. I lost basically all the muscle in my leg. I had a very skinny, scrawny right leg. So the obstacle that I was facing was whatever this unknown illness was.
Awesome. And, well, not awesome, but thank you for sharing. And before we go any further, I'm just going to let you know, I get woozy when we sing like The Blood. So if anyone here who is like me, just so you know, she's going to walk through her story, and I'm sitting down for a reason. So
Yes.
when did you first realize that this was something you could not fix on your own?
So after I went to the orthopedic doctor, he basically told me, I'm going to send you to 8 weeks of physical therapy. However, I have seen a patient present in this way, exactly like you, and that patient had MS. And so I'm going to send you to 8 weeks of PT, and if it doesn't work, then you have to come back and I'm going to send you to a neurologist. And I was like, okay, fine. I'm really hoping these 8 weeks of PT work. They didn't at all. I got worse. I couldn't even do half of the physical therapy exercises because it was so painful. So I went back to him, and he sent me to a neurologist to be tested specifically for MS. I went to this appointment where if anyone sees Eli getting pale, please let me know, because I'm about to talk about needles, and he doesn't like it. I had an EMG, and this is a test where they take a acupuncture needle, and they stick it in your muscle. And you have to flex your muscle to see if your muscles are activating. So I went in. The doctor's like, oh, I don't know how old I was at this time, probably 23, but he's thinking she's a healthy 23-year-old, so nothing is gonna come of this. This is pointless. And so he walks in, and he's just going about it and doesn't really care. And I'm crying also, it's so painful. And he's like, "You're fine." So he does my whole right leg. He does 2 in the quad, calf, foot. Does my left leg to compare. And then once he does that, he's like, oh, there's something so wrong. I don't know what's going on with your leg, but there's something wrong. So he pulls my mom aside. He's talking to her, what's the medical history, all of that stuff. And then he comes back in, and he's like, we're going to test more parts. So he's like, let's do your back. So he did my full back. He went up into my neck. He did both my arms, my hands. He did my groin, and then that was the end of that one. So yeah, he did a lot, and after that I had 2 more EMGs with him, where this part gets worse. He actually tested my tongue by going under, under my chin into the muscle that controls your tongue. He also tested my neck over here. It was crazy. But the last one I had with him, before he gave me some news I was not expecting, he was testing my shoulder, basically my shoulder blade and my entire arm. I basically lost function of my arm out of nowhere, and it was in a lot of pain, so we were trying to figure out what was going on. And I had asked him a very important question, because I thought I had this, and all the stuff he was testing me for was very close to ALS. And so I'm wondering, I asked him, hey, do you think I have ALS? And he said, this is exactly what he said. You are not presenting in that way. However, I can't tell you if you have it or you don't have it. And that changed my life. That was the hardest thing ever to hear. It was very, very difficult. My mom ended up taking off of work that day, and we ended up crying for the entire day. But it was a huge turning point in my life, because I had bought a Bible a week before that, never opened it, just was curious and felt like God was telling me to buy a Bible. And it was just sitting there, I was staring at it. And that day, I could feel God telling me, open up your Bible and read it and pray to me and talk to me. I need to hear from you. And so I did. And actually the first verse I remember reading, if you when you first get your Bible, you just open it, you don't really know what you're doing, you're going like this, in that one. That's exactly what I did. And I'm like, God's going to speak to me. And so the first verse I ever read in my Bible, the first verse I ever read in any Bible, was Psalm 35. It said, weeping may last through the night, but joy comes in the morning. And that I was like, oh my gosh, he hears me. Because I was crying at this point. I was crying for the whole night. So that night, I prayed for the first time. I never stopped praying after that. I read my Bible, never stopped reading my Bible after that. So I just knew that I couldn't get through that part of my story, or any of my story really, without his help. That was a huge day in my life, and the months leading up or coming after that were really big too. But I did want to go into more of like the tests that I had, because this was the point where I started getting a ton of tests. Nobody knew what was going on. So I had probably 8 EMGs through my entire 2.5 years of being sick. And then I also had a lumbar puncture, which was really bad. It was better than I thought, but it was scary. I ended up doing steroid infusions for an entire week. That was their treatment because they didn't know what else to do. So they said, let's try steroid infusions. However, literally like a week after doing steroid infusions, if you know about steroids, they deplete your immune system so bad. And I ended up getting extremely sick afterwards and was like borderline septic and in the hospital for 4 to 5 days. I had multiple MRIs. The first hospital visit I had, I was there for a week, and I was sent there by my doctor because he thought I had leukemia in my pelvis. That was the first thing that he thought when I saw him. And so I ended up getting a ton of MRIs while I was there. I had a full back MRI, C-spine, T-spine, L-spine. That took 3 hours in itself of being in an MRI machine for 3 hours. Then I had to go back and get a head MRI and a pelvis MRI that same hospital visit. That was another 3 hours of being in the machine. And also, if you've never had a head MRI, it's very terrifying because you're like trapped in this thing. It was very scary. So yeah, there was a lot happening, and that was when I was like, I cannot do this by myself. This is terrifying.
And so you have this Bible, you start praying, but is there like, which also just as a side note, we don't recommend the open your Bible to a random verse and point to a strategy.
Yeah.
We will help you if you have questions about reading a Bible. But like, what led you to do that? Like, what led you to buy a Bible? What led you to be even like all curious about God?
I worked with like I said, I was a pediatric nurse, and I worked with a doctor, and she was truly amazing. I mean, changed my life. When I worked with her and when I was talking with her, I could just tell that something was different about her. She was very kind, never gossiped, and there was a lot of gossip in the place that I was working, but never gossiped, always lifted everyone up, was just so loving, had a big heart, and she always asked me if I wanted to go to church with her. And I'm like, no, I don't, because I don't know anything about God, and this is weird. So I always said no, and then she would always ask me, do you want to come to my Bible study at my house? I'm like, no, I don't want to do that either. But she like sparked a curiosity in me because I could see like what God was doing in her life and who she was because she loved Jesus and followed Jesus, and it just made me very curious. I also had my nutrition coach at the time. We had stopped doing coaching, but she was obviously still there for me. And she used to send me worship music through this entire time of being sick, and that was so helpful. So I think that God brought them in my life to just kind of pull me closer to him, but I really did feel, even before that God was just pulling me close to him, and he was telling me to get a Bible and read it and spend time with me.
That's awesome. What were you afraid you might lose through the story?
This is a very short answer. My life. I was genuinely so scared that I was going to die. We ended up, after that EMG that I had where he gave me bad news, he said, I'm going to send you to Duke in North Carolina. I'm going to send you to Mayo Clinic in Jacksonville. I'm going to send you to Emory in Atlanta. And that was extremely overwhelming, and we had lots of tests done. I went to Duke. They did their own EMG. So at this point, I think it was like my 5th EMG. And I had asked him, do you think that I have ALS? Like, straight up. What do you think? And he's like, oh, no, I don't think you have that. And then he does the EMG, and I get the results, and at the top, there's like a differential diagnosis, so something versus something else. It was a very rare neurological condition versus ALS. And I was like, you said I don't have that. What's going on? So then I lost all my trust in this doctor. And then I was pushing for more tests from him, and I heard nothing. So he kind of just left me in the dust, and I had no idea what was going on. So at this point, when I saw Duke, I was thinking, well, I'm seeing Duke. I don't need to see Mayo Clinic or Emory, so I'm going to try and cancel these appointments. And so I called Mayo Clinic multiple times and was put on hold, and they were saying their wait time was 2 hours long, and I'm like, I don't want to wait for that. So I could not cancel it, but I felt like God was telling me, like, you need to go here, and you need to be seen by them, because what they found was crazy. So I ended up going to Mayo Clinic and saw a neurologist there. He basically told me, what you have is not primarily neurological. There's something else going on. I don't know what it is, but I'm going to send you to other doctors, and I would really like an MRI of your quad, which me and my mom had pushed for that multiple times, but they're like, we don't see any point in getting an MRI for your quad. I'm like, that's where all the damage is, but okay. So I did get that MRI, and it was the worst experience ever. I have been through multiple testing with lots of needles, and yes, they were painful, but this MRI was on a whole nother level of painful. Like, my leg was almost like 90 degrees. It could not straighten it. It didn't really move. It was like stuck. And so I had to put my leg in a cage in the MRI machine and straighten it out for like an hour straight. And it was terrible. And I remember crying in the machine. I remember praying out loud, and if you didn't know, there's a camera where they can see you, and the guy's watching me cry and pray. And I pressed the button because I'm like, I cannot do this anymore. This is unbearable. And he's like, please hold on, we're almost done. You really need to stay in here for this. And I felt God saying like something's gonna come out of this, so you just need to hold on. So after that, we get the results of my MRI, and the doctor calls me and he says, okay, there's one thing that I found an incidental finding, and I'm more worried about that than your leg. And so he tells me I have a tumor on my ovary and that I need to get an ultrasound as soon as possible. And that was absolutely terrifying, obviously, but not the first time I had heard tumor or cancer or anything like that. So he also told me, you have damage in your leg, like previous nerve damage, but he was like, I don't really care about that. I care about the tumor. And so I ended up getting in touch with a gynecologist oncologist to have some tests ran and get an appointment with her, and they ran cancer testing. And majority of that testing came back negative. It was normal. However, my friend had her baby passed away at this time, so I was at the baby's funeral, and we got the last test back, and it was positive, and it was a very high positive. So we ended up going to the car, me and my mom, and crying, obviously, because it was very scary to get that back. But we left the funeral early. It was a very hard day for us, and I ended up having surgery on this tumor on my ovary. They took the ovary, the fallopian tube, and the tumor, and I was in the hospital 2 days after that because of extreme pain in my stomach, and my lungs were super inflamed. And they did a CT scan of my abdomen, and they said, oh, look, we have another incidental finding. And I'm like, oh, of course you do. Like, great. And they said, you have a mass on your liver. And I'm like, oh my gosh, what is going on? And so we hadn't gotten the biopsy results back at this point, so we're thinking that tumor on my ovary was cancer, and it had spread to my liver, worst case scenario. But I eventually got the results back of the biopsy on my tumor on my ovary, and it was benign. Still a tumor, just benign, and it had the craziest things in it. It had teeth and hair and thyroid tissue. So it was very weird. But we found out, like, not cancer, and then the thing in my liver, not cancer, benign. So I had heard a lot of things at this point. I had heard you might have ALS, you might have cancer, you might have these diseases that are going to put you in a wheelchair for life. And so at that point, I was terrified that I was dying. Like, I was so scared of losing my life, and I was actually very, very scared of death at this point. Lots of things were coming my way. And every symptom that I had from that point on, from hearing you might have ALS, it made me think that I had it. I had problems swallowing. I had problems breathing. My arms didn't work. My grip strength was going. My body was just very weak. And so everything that came up after that, I'm like, it's ALS, and I'm dying, basically.
And so, with all the ups and downs and the doctors and all these answers are not answers, like, did you ever question what God was doing?
I wouldn't say I ever asked him why. I knew he had a plan for me, and I never doubted that. However, I was extremely frustrated and angry at some point, because I felt like at one point in my story, after Mayo Clinic, we had taken 2 steps forward, and we were making some progress, and then we would take 5 steps back. So I'm like, I just was so frustrated and angry. I just wanted to get to the outcome. So I remember praying a prayer, and I was extremely vulnerable and honest with God and telling him like, hey, I'm just mad at you. I'm mad at you. I'm frustrated with you. I'm angry with you. And like, I just want this to be done. I just want to know what's going on. And I remember going to my mom actually in the kitchen and telling her, like bawling and telling her, I feel like I'm losing my faith. And it was very hard at that time.
And so, what did following Jesus require from you?
For me, I had OCD really bad at this time. I had very bad OCD. It wasn't diagnosed yet, but we knew that's what I had. And I also had anxiety really bad. So surrendering control was super, super hard for me, but that's what Jesus wanted me to do. And I wanted control over everything in that time of my life. I wanted control over the outcome. I thought I had a disease that the doctors kept telling me you do not have. And I'm like, y'all are wrong. I am right. I know what I have. And I also kept telling them I have autoimmune diseases, and they're like, no, you don't. And I just wanted the control over the outcome, the plan, how fast it was happening, and God did not want me to have that control. He wanted me to give it to him.
And so, is there like a specific moment where you knew, like, I have to trust God, I have to trust Him to get through this situation?
Yes, it was that day that they told me that they didn't know if I had ALS or not. I actually remember the exact date. It was October 6th, 2023. That's how much it literally changed my life. That day was so hard for me. I knew that I couldn't do it alone, and I had no doubt that turning to God was the right decision, and that He could help me. But it was very hard, and I knew I had to trust Him in that.
And so, from that moment on, like, what does obedience look like?
For me in that time, obedience was trusting him and obviously was letting go of the control that I wanted to have and just surrendering all the plans I had for my life to his will, basically.
And so, was that decision to trust Him, was that difficult? Was it easy? Was it kind of like, I'm in the middle of it? Like, what did it look like for you to make that decision?
The decision to follow Jesus was not difficult. I saw the way he worked in everyone's lives around me that knew him, and I just had no doubt that he was where I was supposed to be turning to. I had a lot of peace in making that decision and opening my Bible and praying to him. However, the daily choice that we make as Christians to surrender our plans, to trust him, that was extremely hard for me, and it was something I struggled with for a long time of how can I follow Jesus and not trust him? And it was very hard for me to make that decision every day.
And so, looking back now, what is like unforgettable about your story?
I would say I now have an intimate and personal relationship with Jesus. That's what makes my story unforgettable. I'm also alive, and me and my mom really didn't know if I was going to make it through that. It was so uncertain. And my family knows Jesus because of the things that I went through and how I leaned on him. I actually basically forced my mom to come to LifeBridge with me. I was going to church online to a church back home, and I was like, I really want to get baptized. So we have to go to a church, but I couldn't drive at this time. So I'm like, you have to drive me, and you're coming with me. And so she was forced in here, but she has now, she volunteers, she reads her Bible. She has a strong relationship with Jesus now because I forced her in here. And also my grandma, who I think is watching, I hope, she moved back home. She lived with us for a little while, but she moved back home to Kansas, and she goes to Bible studies with her little old lady friends. So cute. They have like a little Bible study group. And then my sister, actually, who's also watching, she came to church, I think during my baptism, and she was like, I really like this church, and I'm going to attend online. So because of Jesus making his way into my life during this really hard time, it has changed basically my whole family's life too.
And if there's a moment like you could pinpoint, and you're like, this is where I saw God move, like God is doing something like unforgettable right now, like what would that moment be?
Okay, last year I had talked to Chris about, I was very interested in the position that I'm actually in right now. And I told him my story, we talked about the position, and he said, you're doing Unforgettable next year. And I was like, yeah, okay, sounds great. So he basically voluntold me, but I was so excited. And he also mentioned something called prayer circles that they were starting soon. And he said, I think you should sign up for it. I think it'd be great for you. And so I was like, obviously, yeah, I'm going to do that. And I was actually the first person in the first prayer circle. It was the first time slot. And I didn't know what I was asking for. I had no idea. I went into it and I'm like, what am I praying about? No clue. So I ended up fasting that whole day before my prayer circle, and just trying to get a little bit of clarity. I didn't want to ask for healing because I felt like God had me in that spot, in that position, in that season for a reason. And I felt like if he was going to heal me, then he would have already done it. And I felt like, I had purpose in that or something. And so I was fasting and I was actually doing the dishes and
So you were cleaning.
I was
So
cleaning.
you can clean. That's proof.
I was cleaning.
That's
The one
evidence.
time I
It
cleaned,
happened. It's not a true fact anymore. We're gonna call mom a liar. Cool.
I was cleaning, yes. And the one time I'm cleaning, I hear Jesus talking to me, actually. So I should probably clean more. Um, but he said, it's okay to ask for healing. And it was like a weight lifted off my shoulders. I'm like, oh my gosh, thank you so much, because I didn't know what I was going into this prayer circle asking for. So I walked into my prayer circle and I felt ready for it. And however, it was a little bit intimidating because I walk in and there's one chair in the center and all the elders on the outside, and I'm like, okay. And they're like, tell us about your story, and I'm like, okay. It was a little bit scary, but after that, I told them my story. Everything went really well. Chris got up and said, "Okay, now we're gonna put our hands on you, and we're all gonna pray." But they didn't all pray at the same time. They prayed at the same time, but different prayers, and it was the most like the coolest experience I've ever had. The Holy Spirit was absolutely present in that room. It was very cool. My mom was in there with us, and we're crying, and it was great. Um, but the support that I felt afterwards was the biggest thing, of people asking me like, so what's happened since your prayer circle, or how are you doing, how are you feeling? And actually a lot happened. I ended up, I remember I texted Chris and I told him, this is word for word from my text, a lot of this healing is going to take some stepping out for me as well. God isn't just going to hand it all to me. And it was during our try season, and I was telling myself, like, I have to at least try. It's not just going to pop out of nowhere and boom, I can run, but I didn't even try to run. So I ended up getting on a treadmill. I don't think I told my mom that I was doing this because she would have yelled at me. But I got on a treadmill and I started jogging. And that was the first time I had run in like 2.5 years, 3 years probably. And then I was able to get on my knees and pray, which I was having a lot of problems getting to the ground and getting off the ground. And I used to see people praying on their knees all the time. I'm like, I really wish I could like have that posture of praying, and I was able to actually. And then I slept fully on my sides, both sides, with no pain. I was sleeping on my back, in kind of like a hospital bed, but one for your house. I slept on my back for 2.5 to 3 years and did not move in my sleep. So being able to actually move my body like that, and get good sleep, was amazing. And then I woke up with no pain. And I started walking without my my big metal cage brace. But the biggest thing actually was, one of the biggest things. After running the first time, I felt tingling in my quad. And for the whole 2.5 years or 3 years of being sick, I felt nothing. Like my leg ended up plateauing. It didn't get worse, but it never got better. And it was basically numb. All my muscles, because they were dead and my nerves were dead, everything was numb. And so I felt tingling. I'm like, oh, I don't know if this is like a good or a bad thing. And then I started to feel pain. And I'm like, is this a good pain or a bad pain? Like, what did I do to myself? But I ended up going to the doctor, and my neurologist said the tingling and the pain is because your nerves and your muscles are waking up. And I was like, oh my gosh, this is the craziest thing ever, yes. And so it was really, really cool. The prayer circle literally changed my life. It was the best experience. And then shortly after the prayer circle, probably a few months after, I ended up going into what's called a quiet remission. So I had the diseases. I had all the diseases still. They're always going to be with me. They're never going to leave, unfortunately. But my symptoms were very minimal. I had barely any pain. I had started medication. I take 2 shots every month. And I was feeling great. So the prayer circles really changed my life, actually.
So would you go back and remove the obstacle if you could?
I get this question a lot, and I definitely got it a lot when I was in the middle of all of it. I never would. I would never go back and change it. I remember listening to a song a few months ago, and it's called What I Didn't Know Then. And it says, there's a part of the song that says, I wouldn't change a thing. I'd even walk this road again. It took me losing everything, but I gained you in the end. And that's exactly how I felt. I lost a lot of things at this time, which is really hard. I lost a lot of friends who I thought were going to be with me through all of it. I lost my independence. I was in a wheelchair for months. I was using a walker while still working as a pediatric nurse, actually. I was using crutches. I used a cane. I had a plate. It's called an AFO. A plate was in my shoe, and it looked like a shin guard. And so I lost the ability to do everyday things. I could not clean. Don't clean now anyways, so it didn't really matter. Couldn't cook. Couldn't do anything. So I lost a lot during that time, but I gained Jesus. Like, he was by my side, and I knew that he was never going to leave. So I would absolutely do it all over again because I walked out with something that was so great and so amazing.
And so, what did this obstacle teach you about God?
This is something me and my mom always say. God always has a plan, even though you can't see it. And that's what he taught me. And he also taught me that his timing is absolutely perfect. My timing is not. And so, actually, his timing was so perfect. The beginning of last year, I was officially diagnosed with all the things. I mean, it just came flying at me all at once. So I'm going to say them. They're very long words. Very, very long words, and you're not going to have any idea what I'm talking about, but I'm still going to say them. So in my leg, I got diagnosed with idiopathic lumbosacral plexopathy. It's extremely, extremely rare. I only know one other person in the United States that has it, so that's why it took so long for me to get diagnosed. It's basically autoimmune related, and my body attacked the nerves in my leg, basically. And then I also got diagnosed with autoimmune arthritis. So this one's super, super long. Non-radiographic axial spondyloarthritis. Crazy name. And then it's basically like arthritis, autoimmune arthritis in your big joints. So my body doesn't like my body, really. It's very angry at itself, and it sees my joints as something that's foreign. So it will go and attack my joints and eat them basically until I don't have any left. And then I also got diagnosed with psoriatic arthritis, which is the same thing but in your little joints, and psoriasis, which if you've seen it, it's like patchy plaques on your skin. It's not cute. And then I got diagnosed with an autoimmune eye disease. So basically my eyes get super inflamed and I can go blind if it gets really bad. So yeah, it's crazy. Crazy time.
Also, if someone pronounces any of those correctly, I'll buy you a free slushie out there in the lobby.
Absolutely.
One try, only one take. How are you different, Tyra, today because of what happened?
I would say, obviously, I was extremely strong physically before all this happened, but I was not strong mentally or spiritually. So now I feel like I've gained my strength mentally and spiritually. I feel like I can get through anything because God's by my side. And I had OCD and anxiety really bad. I was on a lot of meds for it at that time, and I'm not on any of them anymore. And I'm not nearly as worried. Thank you so much. Yes, this is really great. I'm not nearly as worried as I used to be. I'm more of a go with the flow person because obviously my plans are my plans, but they're not always going to work out. So definitely more go with the flow now.
And so someone who is sitting here today who feels stuck in their Jordan River, and for anyone this is their first week or you've missed some of the previous Unforgettables, Chris talked and walked through the story in Joshua 4. There's the Jordan River, and they need to cross it, and it's coursing, and they still not think they're going to cross it. And it's only when they step out in faith that God stops the water and allows them to pass through. And so for us, unforgettable moments, these obstacles are these things that feel impossible. They require faith to get to the other side. But someone's sitting here on the first side of it. Like, what would you tell that person?
I would say, like what me and my mom always say, that God always has a plan, even if you can't see it. I would also tell you to trust him because his plans are so much better than you could ever imagine. And the biggest thing I would tell you is you're going to make it. You're going to make it through. You're going to survive it, but you're not going to do it by yourself. Like, you need him by your side. And until you have him by your side, you're going to be stuck in that obstacle for a long time.
And what lie do you think fear tells us?
For me personally, fear told me that I was alone. I knew in the back of my head I was not alone. I obviously had my mom, I had Jesus, but fear was telling me you are by yourself, and no one understands, and I wouldn't survive. That's what fear was telling me. You're not going to survive this. Like I said, I lost a lot of friends during this time. When you have chronic illnesses that go on for a long time, um, I think it's just hard for people to be there for you because they didn't expect it to go on this long. That's also all you talk about at that time because it's the biggest part of your life. And so I think it was just a little bit more than the people in my life could handle. So people definitely did stop checking in on me eventually. They stopped asking if I was okay. They stopped asking about all the tests I was having. So that was really hard to lose those people by my side. Um, it really did feel like it was just me and my mom, like against all of this. No one saw all the things that we had to go through. Literally buying shoes was the hardest thing for me to do because I had a plate in my shoe and I could only wear certain types of shoes, and so it always ended up in tears. It was always something that I dreaded. I had severe fatigue at this time, and I slept in my mom's bed because genuinely I thought I was going to die. I felt like my body was giving out on me. So it was very hard, and I did feel like I was alone and that I wasn't going to survive it.
And in response to that, what truth did God teach you through this?
Obviously, he taught me that I wasn't alone, that he was always with me, he's always by my side, and that I can make it through anything now that I have him by my side. He taught me that he's faithful and that he's always listening too.
And so someone is waiting for God to remove the obstacle before they obey. What would you tell that person?
This is very blunt, but I'm going to tell you it's not happening. It's not going to happen if you're not obeying. There's a reason he has you in the obstacle that he has you in. He's trying to show you something. He's trying to teach you something. So I would advise you to listen, to obey, to trust him, and to surrender whatever plans you thought you had for your life.
And so for you, what does trusting Jesus look like?
Today, like I said, I went into a quiet remission shortly after prayer circles with all of my autoimmune diseases and my leg also. And I started monthly treatment. However, I started working here, and Camp Bridge Kids happened. And it was a lot of fun, but I was not expecting how exhausting it was going to be on my body. That was the most I had, the most active I had been in 3 years. So very exhausting, and it actually brought me out of remission, unfortunately. So all of the pain that I had during that time, everything, all the symptoms returned. So trusting him right now would just be knowing that he's gonna help me get back into remission because he did it. He already did it, and I know he can do it again.
And so you do work here at Life Ridge, and you just gave a really great review for Camp Bridge Kids.
It's great.
Can
it's really
you
fun.
please send your kids next year? Maybe it's next summer. Tell us, what is it like working here? What do you love about your job?
It's fun. It's great. I love this place. I love, obviously, the kids. They're the best part of the job. The kids are amazing. And obviously, I love the community. I feel like I have a huge family here. I also love all the behind the scenes things. That's actually my answer. I love the behind the scenes stuff that we do that nobody sees. The way that we prepare for events, the way that we prepare for camp. And it makes to the outside. When I was a volunteer, I had no idea what they did behind the scenes, and now I get to see it, and that's my favorite part. Because to the outside, it looks effortless. Like it looks like, you know, everything's going as planned, even though sometimes it's not. But it's very fun to work here. I had a talk with Chris last year, like I said, about this position, and I was so interested. It was before I ever even volunteered here, and he gave me a rundown. Sorry, Chris. He is watching, and he does not like the story, but he gave me a rundown of what kids ministry is, and he terrified me. And I was like, I am not doing that job. He's like, it's the most important position in this church, and I hold it to high standards, and here's some of the questions the elders are going to ask you. I'm like, I don't know how I'd answer that. I'm scared. I don't know enough. So then I was like, I'm going to get plugged in. I'm going to start volunteering. I'm going to learn as much about kids ministry as I possibly can. And then I know that this is where I'm supposed to be.
And so why did you have the conversation, Chris? Why did you feel called first to step into ministry?
Like I said, I worked as a peds nurse before this, but when I was in nursing school, actually, fun fact, I did not want to work with kids. I don't know why, that was my thing. They scared me really bad when I was a nurse, so I'm like, ooh, like, that's not something I want to do. I actually said, I will never work with kids, and you don't ever say that. But so I wanted to get back into working with kids because when I got into peds, I'm like, this is the best field ever. Like, they bring so much joy. I didn't really like being a nurse, but the fact that I worked with kids made it so much easier for me. And it made me love my job. But then I became disabled and I became very sick and I had to leave that job. So I really wanted to get back to working with kids again, just not as a nurse. And Chris was up here talking, I think, about volunteering and how they needed more volunteers. And so I was like, well, I'm gonna sign up to volunteer, obviously, in kids. However, my grandma was going through a lot of health issues at this time, so I had to step away to be with my family and to help her get through that. So during the fall, I actually signed up to volunteer, but I signed up to volunteer in guest services with Amy. And because I love Amy, she's amazing. Oh my gosh. That's what drew me to guest services. I'm like, I love Amy. I want to volunteer with her. I want to do whatever she does. And then I was literally shadowing, and she goes, why are you in guest services? I'm like, I don't know, because I like you. And she's like, why are you not in kids? You were a peds nurse. I'm like, it's a good question. It's a great question. But genuinely, I wasn't in kids because I was scared. I was so scared of, like, you have to be comfortable with being uncomfortable with kids because they can read you. And so that scared me. I also had zero immune system because I was on, it's like a low dose chemo at the time, and I was on immunosuppressants. So I had no immune system, and kids are always sick. And I was wearing a mask at that time. So I'm like, I don't know if I want to go in there. But I did. I messaged Whitney, and I took the step to volunteer in kids. I shadowed, and I loved it. It was so much fun. I truly feel that God did call me to kids ministry. I'm also a leader in student ministry with Eli. And
Shameless plug.
it's amazing. But I really do feel like God called me to student ministry, to kids ministry, to work with kids. It is the best thing, the best decision I made in my life next to following Jesus.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Tyra. I'm going to give her a round of applause. That was awesome.
Thank you,
so much for
guys.
sharing your story and testimony. And so this whole series is about trusting God with the obstacles in our life. It's one of my favorite series we get to do every year. But as we wrap up, I just want to offer you 2 opportunities as a response. And so the first one is that we have some rocks out in our lobby. They're very nice, fancy rocks out there with the Sharpie. And these are in reference to Joshua 4 we talked about earlier, Chris talked about 2 weeks ago. I'm just going to read a portion of that passage. When all the people had crossed the Jordan, the Lord said to Joshua, now choose 12 men, one from each tribe. Tell them, take 12 stones from the very place where the priests are standing in the middle of the Jordan. Carry them out and pile them at the place where you'll be at camp tonight. So Joshua called together the 12 men he had chosen, one from each of the tribes of Israel. And he told them, go into the middle of the Jordan in front of the ark of the Lord your God. Each of you must pick up a stone and carry it on your shoulder, 12 stones in all, one for each of the 12 tribes of Israel. We'll use these stones to build a memorial. In the future, your children will ask you, what do these stones mean? Then you can tell them, they remind us at the Jordan River, the Lord stopped. I'm going to read again. They remind us that the Jordan River stopped flowing when the ark of the Lord's covenant went across. These stones will stand as a memorial among people of Israel forever. And so these stones are here. They are for you to take one, to write the obstacle, to write the thing that feels insurmountable in your life. For Tyra in that moment, it was this unnamed diagnosis, this thing that was lingering, that had a lot of questions, a lot of tests, all these things. And so for you, that moment, the thing that just consumes your mind, the situation that you lose sleep over at night, the thing that you wake up and it's the first thing you're worried about, the thing that just feels like, I do not know how the other side of this happens. And so those things that we feel like we can't do on our own, like Tyra said, this is for you to write that obstacle and then just to hold on to it. And then when God does do the unforgettable in our life, when God does the amazing thing, to have that stone, to place it somewhere in your house, place it somewhere visible that you pass in anywhere you see. And so that when people ask about this rock, you can go, this is the testament to what God has done in my life. The thing that I did not think was possible, God did anyway. And so that is an opportunity. Please take a rock if you've not gotten one. Write the obstacle. Take 5 rocks. If there's 5 obstacles in your life, like trust that God's going to do more than you can ever imagine. And the second thing I want to offer is to do what Tyra talked about, which is not face the situation alone. In a moment, I'm going to pray. And then after I pray, there's going to be a prayer team up front. And one of the opportunities you have is to come forward to bring the situation to somebody else, to say, I don't hold this on my own. I want someone else to be with me when I come and bring this to God. And maybe you've already done that, you've already talked to God about it, but just having the community, having the support of people who are in your corner, who are praying for you, praying with you, is such an amazing thing to have. And so, or maybe you're on the other side of the Jordan River. God has already done the amazing thing, and you just want to celebrate what God has done in your life. That is a great reason to also come forward. And if you're somewhere between in the story, like, please do not miss the opportunity to come forward, talk to somebody, praise God, bring it to God, honor God with the situation. It is one of the most amazing things you can do, and you trust God, and you don't think God's gonna do it, and I don't need to do anything. But to say, God, I'm coming before you. I'm placing myself at your feet, and knowing you're gonna do amazing things, I want to join you in that. And so, please don't miss the opportunity. If not, I'm done praying. You're free to go. See you at beach night tonight, 5 o'clock ish. But I'm gonna pray and wrap up. So, God, you are so good. Thank you for the fact that you did amazing things in Tyra's life, God. That you, in a situation that felt hopeless, God, that felt confusing, that lacked clarity, God, that you were still in the center of it all. God, I pray for anyone who's in a situation, God, that feels similar, God, that feels hopeless or confusing, or God, just feels like it's overwhelming and conquering our lives. God, I pray that you speak louder than that, God. You surround them with community that is louder and more loving. God, I pray that you are a source of peace and refuge. God, I pray that we trust you in all circumstances, God. I pray that we celebrate your faithfulness to us, God, your goodness, your everlasting kindness, God, that you offer to us. I pray that we rest in those moments. God, I pray that we trust you in the hard moments. God, I pray that as a result of what you are doing, these unforgettable moments, these things that we can point to and say, God has done work in our lives. God, as a result of those moments, that our families look different, that our workplaces look different, that Savannah, Georgia looks different. God, not because of what we've done, but because of what you've done through us and for us. And